Okay, guys, so today we're going to take a look at camera movement. This is a very important part of being a filmmaker, is knowing exactly how to move your camera to help tell your story. You will have a quiz over this material tomorrow, so you need to make sure you're paying attention and filling in your notes. You should already have the handout, which says camera movement notes on the top. You're going to fill in the blanks. We're going to go through all of these notes, okay? So the first thing we talk about when we talk about camera movement is we talk about motivation. When it comes to our camera movement, we want to make sure our movement is motivated. Because it looks cool is not a good reason to move your camera, okay? So it must be motivated. We want to use our camera moves to do several things, right? Maybe when we want to change the viewer's perspective, okay? We want to make what we are shooting look bigger, smaller, or even scarier. And so we use camera movement to help us tell our story and enhance our viewers' experience. One reason we could move is we could move for emotion, right? If we're moving in to get a tighter shot and a more close up shot, then we're getting more emotion in our shot the closer we get. So that would be move for emotion. We could also move for movement, which I know sounds silly, but that just means we're moving because something in our frame is moving. And we can move to hide or reveal things. And so this would be a typical slider shot where you want to hide or reveal a person or something in your shot. Now, there's different ways to move a mounted camera. You can pan and you can tilt. So just to look a little closer at those two, a pan is when we move the camera from left to right. Okay, we usually use a tripod for the smooth effect. Um, to be a great panner, you want to get some practice. Pan is pretty old school though. One reason why we might pan, maybe we're following a subject, okay, showing the distance between two objects, or making a link between objects and people, okay. Um, Rule when you're panning, always start and stop on a still shot, okay. And so pretty much all of these movements, the rule of thumb is you start at a stopped position, you make your movement, and then you stop. Okay? And so to be a successful move, you want to start on a still shot, begin your pan, and then finish on a still shot. Okay? You always want to practice before you actually try to shoot it. Other pans, we have a tracking pan. This is where the camera follows something in the scene. A whip pan, where the camera moves super fast from one object to another. And then a pan reveal, revealing a certain element, right, essential to the story. Now, a tilt is instead of left to right, moving the camera up or down. So we're not raising the position at all, we're just moving the camera up and down. So why would we tilt, right? Well, like panning, we might do it to follow a subject from top to bottom, okay, or a stationary object. Um, Tilting is great to show how tall or how high something is and show its grandness. And so, same thing, the rule here, always start on a still shot, begin your tilt, and finish on a still shot. Now, there are types where the camera and the operator move together. It's like a dolly, maybe a jib or crane, a stabilizer or slider. So, what are those things? Well, a dolly is going to be what you see in this picture. I think this is the movie Facing the Giants, which was a great movie. And so, what a dolly is, the camera set on on tracks or wheels, and it's moved towards, right? That's called a dolly in, or away, which is called a dolly out from the subject. Okay. Um, so think about our tripod. Our tripod's on wheels. So technically, that's a form of a dolly. What you see in this picture are dollies that they actually built for this film. And so these are fancier dollies, but anything that has wheels can be considered a dolly. Whenever you're using that dolly, right? How do you use it? Well, the camera can be used in a trucking form. And so the camera is moved in front of the subject to the left, called the truck left, or to the right, called the truck right. A poor man's dolly, very simply, a wheelchair can be used as a dolly. This is a simple, easy solution. Even a chair with wheels can be used. Remember, there's always a way to do it, and so wheelchairs are always great when you're looking for a dolly. Now, in some movies, we have what's called a dolly zoom, and this is when we dolly in and zoom out at the same time, okay, or vice versa. And so what happens is the framing stays the same, but the the background is what's really moving in a dolly zoom. And so when I get back, I'll show you guys an example of a dolly zoom. Dolly zooms are really cool. They're really hard to do. And so basically, it's a combination between a dolly and a zoom. So next we have our Steadicam. Steadicams are exactly what it sounds like. They're used to steady your shot, but you can actually move with them. I have a glide cam that we'll use from time to time. I don't have a super fancy one like in this picture, but a Steadicam, this is what most films are, any action scenes are shot with in films. And so the camera's mounted on different gyros and different things, and it stabilizes the camera. A real Steadicam is super expensive, and so if you ever see one, they're super cool, but they're real expensive. Why would you use a Steadicam, right? Well, maybe you're following a subject through twists and turns, right? Also, dolly's great, but it's limited, right? And there's only so much you can do with a dolly. So a Steadicam is usually good to help follow someone through a hallway, through doors, and that kind of thing. It's used to get that tracking shot without having to have actual tracks. So there's a couple videos that if you look in our Canvas account, you can go and check out um, using a Steadicam. There's one, the birth of the Steadicam, and the other one is the Spielberg long take, Spielberg's signature. It's pretty cool. You should check it out. Next is a jib. So a jib is a high angle shot. Usually the camera's moving, and so you'll see this at live concerts. You'll see this on the set of an actual newscast in a news studio, like a Fox News studio. The camera is generally being controlled remotely, um, and like I said, it's usually found at concerts. We don't have a jib, but jibs are really cool. You can see it. The camera's hanging off of the jib on the right side of the picture on your screen. Next is a crane. Um, this is a techno crane that you see in this shot. It's also a high angle shot. It's a lot like a jib, but the difference is a crane is on wheels. So the entire crane moves, not just the camera. And so most cameras accommodate the actual camera guy and the camera and use remote controls. This picture is from the intro of Spectre, one of the recent James Bond films, and this gigantic techno crane was used. It's pretty cool. If you go to Canvas and click on the link, you can actually check out this video, which will show you the opening scene of Spectre and kind of give you some behind the scenes stuff. It's pretty cool. Here's another video that kind of shows you the use of a techno crane. Once again, you can see that if you go on Canvas. So here are some examples of handheld stabilizers. Like I said, the Glide Cam is what we have. They're great. They're more reasonably priced than a Steadicam. They don't work quite as good as a Steadicam, but they're pretty good. A monopod is just a device that has just one leg, and you can see it in the top right-hand corner. Then you have the Movi and the Ronin, both of which are pretty cool. When I get back, I'll show you guys some videos, or you can go to Canvas and see some videos of the Movi and the Ronin. That's the stuff at the bottom of the screen. They're super awesome stabilizers. Probably some of the best on the market right now. Next, we can talk about sliders. Sliders give us some beautiful cinematic shots when they're used correctly. And so here are two examples of a slider. I do have a slider that I'll show you guys. Um, They range from pretty cheap to pretty expensive, just depends on the quality of the slider, but they give you those typical sliding shots. Very, very great for film. Now we're going to take a look at camera moves part 2. And so I've combined everything into one part. And so let's take a look at the rest of this. Um, we also can have movement where the camera lens is the only thing that moves. And so in this type of movement, you don't actually move the camera. So we have a zoom and we have what's called a rack focus. Zoom is exactly what it sounds like. You're going to either turn the dial on the lens or push some kind of button on an electronic zoom to actually zoom the camera in. Um, a camera zoom for your movement is actually an awful type of movement. It's very old school, and it doesn't really make your film seem very cinematic. So, and if you can, try to stay away from the zoom as much as possible. So you're bringing your objects closer to you, okay, and showing size and perspective. Continuous zooming in and out is considered amateur, and so be careful with that. You don't want to seem like a soccer mom, right? So here we're just looking at the fact that if you use the lens zoomed out, you're getting a wider shot, right? Your depth perception has changed, and so it's going to be a little different. Um, we have a video in the Canvas course. You can go and look here. It shows you a little bit about zooming. Now, next is a rack focus. This is when you focus from one object in your scene to another object in your scene. If you look at this picture, in the top picture, Keanu Reeves' face is in focus. In the bottom picture, his hand with the phone is in focus. And so, how do we do this? Well, we focus on one object, right? And then adjust the focus so that object becomes blurred and the other object comes into focus. This is great for film. If you look at the picture at the top, right, the cat closer to the camera is in focus on the left. The cat further away from the camera is in focus on the right. And so we're changing the focal length, right? You want to be careful when using rack focus. Don't use it just to use it, but you want to use it to help you tell your story. Why would you use a rack focus, right? Well, maybe you want to add drama to your scene, right? You want to show one actor's face, but not the other actor's face. Some rules with rack focusing, always use a tripod or a shoulder mount. Shoulder mounts are fine too. Um, a rack focus looks really bad if the camera is shaky. Here we like to mention just an arc shot. This is your typical arc setup. You have tracks around a platform. Of course, there are other ways to get arc shots, like if you are using a Steadicam, you can actually go around and get that around shot. Or if maybe you're using like a little device that has wheels on it, you could also set up an arc shot. This isn't a very typical shot. The most common place you'll see this is if you watch some newscast, if there's people sitting in a circle, then they're filming using this arc type shot. Next is an aerial shot. This used to be really hard to get. We had to have a helicopter, right? Now we have drones. And so aerial shots can be taken by an unmanned or manned helicopter or plane using to get our landscapes or even an establishing shot for a film. So last little piece, camera technique, right? Do we want to shoot handheld or do we want to shoot shaky cam? So handheld, when we're talking about handheld, we're saying maybe we're using a shoulder mount, okay? We're not using a tripod, monopod, right? Um, if you're using a shoulder mount, right, to rest your camera on your shoulders, then that's an okay way to shoot, okay? To help to balance that camera out and keep it from shaking. But if you're just holding the camera, that's a bad idea, okay? And so whenever you're shooting handheld, you want to use some type of device because our cameras are DSLR, so they're smaller. And so if you look, because of the sizes of DSLRs, we usually use what's called a shoulder rig, and we have a shoulder mount, and that's what we use. You might want to use a shoulder mount or handheld because maybe you're on the go, right? If you're out shooting interviews, you're not going to want to tote a tripod around with you. And so that's why you would use it. Now, if you're not using some type of device, you're just holding the camera, what you end up with is what's called shaky cam. Shaky cam doesn't look very good. And so you have to be careful with shaky cam. If that's what you're going for, then that's a different story. But a lot of filmmakers look at that as just a way to cheap out, right? And so you have to be careful that you use it properly if you're going to use it, and be careful that you're using it professionally and that your film doesn't look like an amateur. So that's it for the movement notes. This video and the notes will be posted on Canvas, so you can go back and watch through it if you'd like. And your quiz over movement is tomorrow. Good luck, guys.